Charles, we've had some new revelations about the national displeasure that was Joe Biden and his autopen. You're joining us again from an undisclosed international location. How you doing?
I'm doing well. I can reveal the continent that I'm on, which is
Oh,
Europe,
really? Oh.
YURP. And now take it to referring to people who live in Europe as Europeans, YURPIANS. But one of the things that is really shocking here, I was in a country in the center of Europe until recently, very recently. And there, what was so shocking is the number of old people in walkers and wheelchairs greatly exceeds the number of kids that you see. And, this idea, we've talked about it in the past, that you can't have a profitable business if its revenues are perpetually going down, unless its costs are going down faster than its revenues. And even then, that's not a pretty picture. So when you look at these countries in Europe, and you take out the impact of mostly illegal immigrants, the inherent domestic populations are all shrinking and not having children. And these markets are becoming less and less interesting for the private sector to export into. On top of that, they're piling on bureaucracies, national, regional, international bureaucracies, and they're just committing assisted suicide. It's sad to see, and it's shocking. And this is before we get to the impact there. I know on Friday, New York time, there was a very disappointing jobs report with only, I think, 22,000 jobs being created in the month, way under the level that you need. This picture in Europe is bleak before you think about how AI and continuing advances in technology are going to just slaughter workforces. I see it across as I go through these various airports. Many of the fast food restaurants have automated machines as opposed to waiters and waitresses and humans. And I mentioned I'm in Europe, but out in Thailand, where I was recently in the airport, they have robots washing floors. Replacing. It's not like the labor force in Thailand is highly paid. So if robots make sense in Thailand, they're going to make sense in Europe. They're going to make sense in the U.S. And then getting back to the excellent job of the art department and on this poster and topic, I mean, we look on the one hand, there's this horrible story about a Ukrainian woman, a beautiful but now dead Ukrainian woman, who left Ukraine because it was too dangerous to find a new life in the United States. And in Charlotte, North Carolina, she was working in a pizza parlor, and I guess coming home, I guess, at night, and some homeless nutcase, for no reason, just stabbed her dead. So, and the mainstream press refuses to cover that. The same way the mainstream press, poo-pooed the idea that Joe Biden was non-compos mentis for most of his dementis for most of his tenure as resident in the White House. I mean, the double standard here. Trump disappears for a few days or whatever, and suddenly he's dead, or he's had heart problems, or this and that. But Joe Biden, to begin with, showed up for work officially about 65% of the time. He took more vacation than I take, and people were basically pretending that he was in charge. And this autopen scandal gets deeper and deeper and deeper. The presidential...
Charles, before we move on to that, because it is very important, I just wanted to point out one other thing about the killing of this Irina Zarutska. Just when you Google that, you don't get the New York Times and the Washington Post. There's very little reporting about this. However, if it was a white crazy guy stabbing a black woman, there would already be riots through the streets. So the degree to which this sort of stuff is not just amplified, but manipulated by the corporate news, it's really disturbing.
It's disgusting. It's disgusting. And on the face of it, we can go back to COVID days. We can go back to Russian hoax days. And you pick the poison. Stuff that you and I immediately figured out was total rubbish And then when we try to point that out on various crowdsource 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, whatever channels that all got canceled, then you wait a couple, 3, 4 years, and you figure out, we were right all along. This is not the traditional news media. I think it was dead before. I don't know what's deader than dead, but that's what it is, right?
Well, you
I mean,
raised
there'd be
another important point where you said that a business that has declining revenues isn't a business. Just like they're trying to suppress this story of this poor woman being killed, there is a particular person who I'm loath to even mention on your valuable time here, but this is what he's been trying to do, destroying all those channels. It didn't just happen by accident. I mean, everybody knows I've been in lawsuits for the past 8 years, and I'm pursued daily by the brother of an individual who used to appear on this show. But he's trying to make it impossible for me to do business and impossible for me to grow. So I want to thank the people who sponsor the show and reiterate that if people enjoy watching even this free show, I can't keep doing it without your sponsorship. So please go to crowdsourcethetruth.substack.com or subscribestar.com or patreon.com and sponsor the show, or follow me on X at JG_CSTT and subscribe, because that is what they're trying to do, Charles. And, drip by drip, month by month, it's becoming increasingly difficult to continue the show.
Exactly. And it's sad to see that. But just dwelling a bit on this arena person, I think the reason that story is not being publicized in the mainstream is that not only does it gut the narrative that Democrats understand how to fight crime, but it also guts the narrative that it was such a great idea to jump in to Ukraine. I mean, here's somebody who left Ukraine because the situation was so bleak and bad. And that kind of underscores or should underscore the bad decision that too many Americans and Westerners made, rushing to embrace a zealot dictator in this Zelensky character and the people who are feasting off the aid flows that we're sending towards Ukraine. I don't know if you noticed this, because it's happened just recently, but Putin in the meeting out there in China appeared to make an overture saying he would meet with Zelensky, having in the past said that Zelensky is illegitimate and therefore there's no point in meeting with him. So Zelensky just fired back in some other meeting and said that he's not going to travel. He'll let Putin travel to meet him in Kyiv, but Zelensky's not going to travel to Russia because Russia's a terrorist state. Somebody really needs. I mean, Zelensky is he jumped the shark, a long time ago. And that guy is arrogant and pushing the world to a place we don't want to be. There's a story on Zero Hedge that the French apparently released some warning that within 6 months we're going to have World War III.
Yeah, the tooling up hospitals and stuff.
Yeah. I mean, no, that's not the direction we want to go in, at least in the United States. I mean, I doubt the people that Bernie Sanders and folks on the left truly want World War III. I find that impossible to believe.
And, lingering on this Zelensky antagonistic comment, he can come to Kiev, this is very typical of the type of thing my ex-Ukrainian wife would say, make some sort of offhanded asshole comment like this that is obviously provocative and going to be refused. I mean, the obvious place for them to meet would be at the White House with Donald Trump there.
Yeah. Or in a neutral country.
Neutral country, but I think it would be appropriate. Obviously, both of them would feel safe at the White House. Putin's not going to go to Ukraine because he would obviously be a target for assassination, and the same thing with Zelensky going to Russia.
Yeah. But really, I mean, I am not as patient as Putin is, but I've seen enough to know that the blob supporting Zelensky is a blob that can't be trusted. I mean, even if you were to go down a path of maybe finding a compromise and maybe trying to reduce it to writing and maybe having a ceasefire and new elections and all that kind of stuff, the likelihood that the blob is going to go back on its word, as it has in the past, is very, very high. And so if your goal as Putin is to have a lasting peace and a buffer zone and just sticking to the arguments that you want, denazification, no NATO, maybe yes to EU for Ukraine. Um, you have to look at this now and just say, all right, you guys, we tried to work it out. We tried to be reasonable. You guys are not reasonable. You're not going to be reasonable. So we'll settle this on the military field, in the fields of battle, because we're winning.
Macron says France does not want to unleash World War III over Ukraine.
Yeah, well, Macron, we trust him.
Micron. He's got a lot more confidence in himself than perhaps is due.
Yeah, it's something else. I mean, and I don't know what IDF stands for. I guess maybe it's Israeli Defense Force.
Yeah,
but I just walked by where I am. I just walked by on the street. Somebody had written "Death to the IDF."
I think it's a popular theme right now, but we've got a possible supporter of that ideology running for mayor here in New York City. The other thing along the lines of what you were talking about with declining populations in Europe, there are a lot of videos emerging now where we see some of these, foreign migrants saying, oh, we're having 5 kids and you're all aging out. And so the populations of these countries, including the one that I'm in right now, are shifting.
Right. Yeah, it's got to change. I mean, I was with people who spoke some English, not as much English as I would have liked, and I'm not going to say which country I was in, but it would surprise you to learn that the ordinary people I spoke to were very much anti-woke, anti-leftist garbage. And these weren't captains of industry or anything. These were nice people in the country who weren't all that politically active, but they were sick and tired of the bullshit and sick and tired of, and they weren't just playing to me because I was an American. I mean, they were talking in different groups, just sick of the course that Europe has been on now since 1989. Klaus Schwab may be dead or not, out of the World Economic Forum, but the World Economic Forum assisted suicide programs are in full force across the West, including in Canada, portions of the blue cities and states in the U.S. And ordinary people are just not having it anymore. Apparently, the government in Japan just fell, and
what?
it's good. Yeah, and it's going to turn hard right.
Oh, but fell. What do you mean by election?
There was something that happened, a loss of some vote or something in the Japanese system that has triggered the unraveling of the coalition, and the left-leaning leader of the coalition has said he's not going to cling to power.
The prime minister resigned after a series of bruising election losses.
Right.
It says.
Right. Yeah, and you're starting to see that in country after country, and I think you're also starting to see, inside the United States. Say what you want about Trump. He's only been president again for 8 months, not even 8 months. And look what he's done. Sealed the border. That couldn't be done, they said, without legislation. Eradicating crime in D.C., they said that was impossible. And you contrast that with Joe Biden. Have you met the Muffin Man? I mean, the guy was just a pathetic embarrassment. Now he has plans. He's announced plans. He's going to have a presidential library in Delaware. Good luck with that project.
What does he need a library for?
Yeah, I know.
You probably saw this, Charles, but there were some new emails that came out that shed further doubt on whether Joe Biden knew who was the captain of the autopen, or even if he was aware that certain people would be receiving pardons or clemency.
Yeah, so the presidential pardon is meant to be just that. It's meant to be a decision that the president makes, not a committee, not Kamala Harris standing in for Joe, not some faceless bureaucrats, not some young interns or whatever they were, because it's supposed to be the person at the pinnacle of power in our government is allowed to have time to reflect upon special cases deserving of pardons or clemency. And it's meant to be very personal. Indeed, those memos you refer to include one that at the beginning of the Biden fiasco, otherwise known as residency or presidency, there's an internal memo saying that the president absolutely has to be the one who makes the pardon decisions. And I think when they realized they couldn't get a straight answer out of him, and possibly also when the aides around him realized they could make money off the process, they went hog wild, absolutely hog wild. It's disgraceful.
It is. I mean, that's a threat to democracy when people can just come in there and, first of all, let criminals go and sell pardons. The other thing I wanted to bring up along the lines of what you were talking about earlier, and I'm sorry to jump around like this, but, okay, in England, I don't know if you heard about this, but this comedian got arrested for some spicy tweets, which actually weren't even that bad. They were offensive to transgender people, but, talk about lack of freedom of speech. This guy was literally arrested and I'm pretty sure put in jail for having some, they say he's relentlessly posting abusive comments online about a trans woman.
Yeah, I mean, I think there has to be some understanding here, some formal understanding, redefining the contours of how speech may or may not be regulated, because the big tech companies that are the target of these various censorship, I would say, efforts by different national governments are chiefly American. And you could, if you were the President of the United States and the Secretary of State, say, interpret these moves as anti-American moves. Anti-American to the core of what drives or has animated the creation of this country. And you could elevate this discussion to that level if you were Donald Trump. You could say, listen, reasonable people can disagree. We're not the UK and you're not America. But looking back over the last, say, to 1941, perhaps, or maybe back to 1915, the United States has been pretty helpful. And our people are somewhat patient, but, our people are beginning to question the wisdom of being as supportive to these individual countries as we have been in the past. Indeed, we wonder, our citizens are looking at, rising costs and falling incomes and a big debt burden and a widening budget deficit. We're wondering exactly why we need so many American troops stationed outside the country. And, we're thinking maybe we bring them home, say, January 1st. Does that work for you if you keep this up? At a certain point in time, you've had to do it. I've had to do it. You think you're in love with somebody, and then you realize it's not working, and it can't work.
Yeah, you got to move your shit out.
Yeah, sure, exactly. Someone has to move someone's shit out here. But
now, Charles, I don't know if you saw this, but speaking of big tech, Trump had this whole dinner. Look at this. All 33 Silicon Valley power players. But that's funny that they say meet all 33. There's one Silicon Valley power player. Oh, well, and here's Elon Musk's explanation for why he wasn't there. Obviously, he's sort of been excommunicated from Trump world, hasn't he?
So to speak, excommunicated.
Touche. But seriously, though, 33 Silicon Valley leaders, that's a little weird, isn't it?
I guess. When was this meeting?
Maybe like Thursday or something. Friday.
Yeah. Just recently, yeah.
Yeah. But Bill Gates was there slobbering in the soup. It was pretty funny. There's a lot of interesting photographs of Melania looking at Bill Gates, like sort of the way somebody looks at a gorilla about to fling feces at the zoo.
Yeah, his personal habits are supposedly not great. Bill Gates. That's what I've heard. I don't know. Who knows?
I don't know if he flung any feces at the dinner, but it's funny. A woman like Melania Trump, people might think, oh, she doesn't have this kind of education or that kind of education, or she speaks with an accent. Women like that know certain things, right. And this look that she's giving to Bill Gates, I think, is she's got a PhD in this.
Yeah. Yeah, Gates has got a lot of blood on his hands, literally. I mean, his Gates Foundation is a wreck. Big supporter of the Clinton Foundation when it shouldn't have been. Refused to do. I personally warned them. I said in 2016, contacted them myself. You got serious problems here. Well, they sent the top person to Washington, D.C. to meet with the Daily Caller about it. They cared, but they figured they could cover it up.
That's what I mean. Disdain, I believe, is what you call this. Look, Charles.
Well, and also, I mean, she's sitting down, so the impact of her heels shouldn't be that significant. And doesn't she look like she's a lot taller than Gates?
Well, I mean, she is a supermodel, right? I think she's probably 5'11" or something. She's pretty tall.
Right, but I mean, she looks 2 inches taller than Gates, or 3 even. Maybe Gates is also slumped over.
Yeah, I mean, he's not exactly a posture.
Pedic.
Yeah.
Wild stuff.
5'11", Melania Trump. She's tall.
Is she? Yeah. Wow, that is tall.
Yeah, that is tall.
And certainly more beautiful than Bill Gates.
I heard some insights about her presence there at the dinner, though. It's, she's got this whole kind of program she's trying to do to bring artificial intelligence to education for maybe students who don't have access to that, which is smart, to tell you the truth, because we've basically got a country full of idiots. And so to the extent that, whoever is going to control artificial intelligence is going to control the future, we want our students to be educated in it. So it's a good initiative, I think, for a First Lady. And robots are here, she says, in a rare public outing, which reminds me of another story that I wanted to bring to people's attention. So she's very into AI. This little robot is my new favorite thing, Charles. He's chasing around Chinese people riding motorcycles on the sidewalk, ready to fight. So I want to get a couple dozen of these for New York to just approach whoever might be on the sidewalk and knock them out.
Yeah. But just back on what Melania was trying to do with AI and education. I mean, I remember I arrived in school able to read just because of the attention of my parents. And, I was kind of bored with what they were doing in class. So AI likely will let people who are more interested in learn faster. And, sometimes education, to teach to the middle of the class, you're holding back the top of the class, or the top half of the class, let's say. So, I actually do think that AI could be extremely promising if used properly, and it could also be extremely damaging. Imagine if AI were wokeified, and you started layering the next level of DEI stupidity upon kids using AI, and then couple that up with, say, denying them access to recreation and video games if they didn't agree, spout that they agreed with DEI principles. I mean, you could see it being used malevolently as well.
Absolutely. I think that's the biggest danger, is humans using artificial intelligence for some nefarious purpose. I think what you're describing, Charles, is the nexus of artificial intelligence and official stupidity. But we got to continue talking about that in the First Amendment Forum. People are going to be able to join us there on crowdsourcethetruth.substack.com or subscribestar.com or patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth. People can also see the sponsor exclusive content by following me on X at JG_CSTT and subscribing. If you're not able to sponsor the show, it would help me a lot if you would share this video with somebody who you think might be interested in it. If you've been watching for years and years and haven't become a sponsor, now is a great time to do that. We'll be back